And everything will have an information layer like this to be able to interact with. What will be your play? What will be your job? What will be your innovation that you want to bring to this blended reality? Blended reality is where we're both in this physical reality and we are in a virtual reality. And what would you do with this world? And how will it have an impact on you? 3D security. And we can't really leave this without saying what some of the markets are that are responsible. Who wants to go to space? Anybody? Show of hands? I'm going to make a wild forecast. I'm making this up right here. So, Ambassador, if you'll allow me. How about a spaceport in Indonesia? How about a spaceport here? How about getting some of the private space entrepreneurs and investors to invest in Indonesia? Sounds like a good place to send a rocket off, right? Anybody want to sign up? There'll be a list for that, huh? There you go. And the spaceport here means you can get a piece of that $1 trillion market. You can build pharmaceuticals in space you can't do here. Space mining, communications, the ability to be able to interact in a telecommunications world of instant communication. Space, the privatization of space is going to be a dramatic upturn over the next 25 years. You want to build ships like this? You can build them on a computer. You can build them collaboratively. The global gaming market will surpass TV in terms of value. The global gaming market will become a major platform worldwide. TV merges with the web, entirely new platform. Commerce trends, 50 billion connected devices over the next decade. Are you ready for that world? So the notion of all of this is innovation, as I started out by saying to you, is really what's next. The ability to be able to manage all this data.
Thank you very much, Dr. Canton. Please take a seat. So the face of the future, it looks like an extension of today's reality of interconnectedness, but in a much more extreme form. We have extreme complexity, extreme velocity, extreme risk, and the key is innovation. And I would like now to invite our next speaker with a slightly different perspective, Dr. George Friedman. Dr. George Friedman is the author of The Next 100 Years, The Next Decade, The Future of War, and The Intelligence Edge. Dr. George Friedman.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I was born in 1949, which means I don't look like Justin Bieber or whatever his name was. And I like standing behind podiums. It also means that I've seen many things. I've seen the American defeat in Vietnam. I've seen the collapse of the Soviet Union. I've seen the Japanese miracle that was going to overtake the United States in the next 3 weeks collapse. I saw the rise of China, the rise of South Korea. Each of these had one thing in common. Reasonable people did not believe it would happen. Reasonable people did not believe the U.S. would lose the war in Vietnam. Reasonable people did not believe that the Soviet Union would collapse. Reasonable people in 1975 did not think that China was going to become the economic engine of the world, or that South Korea would dominate the auto markets and television markets of the world. The biggest danger to understanding the future is reasonable people. Common sense is the danger, because common sense assumes that the future will look like the present, only more so. And so we all know the United States' decline, that China will overcome the United States shortly, that India will be a superpower, because everyone is drawing straight lines. And the world does not consist of straight lines. It consists of curves. And this is why people were surprised when the Soviet Union collapsed. Not because there were not people who said it wouldn't collapse, but because when they pointed out the flaws, they could not imagine that something so solid, so powerful, so palpable as the Soviet Union could cease to be. But it did. And do you know why the people who forecasted did it? Is because they were stupid. They didn't go to the JFK school. They didn't hang around at the LBJ school in Texas, the London School of Economics, and had sophisticated theories of how the world worked. They looked at simple realities, simple, irreducible realities. And they understood that the Soviet Union could not survive. They understood that China did not have to be so poor. They understood, yes, the United States could lose the war in Vietnam, because they looked at the simple facts. I happen to be a very stupid person, so I will begin with some simple facts. The most important date of our lives was December 31st, 1991. That was the day the Soviet Union collapsed. And what was important about that day was not that the Cold War ended. That was important. But for the first time in 500 years, not a single European power was a full global power, exercising economic, military, and political influence around the world. And with that, everything changed. Because the Soviet Union was the last attempt by Europe at global power. And it failed. And the reasons are long and complex, but it failed. What was left was the United States. And no country was more shocked than the United States, because we were fighting again the long war, as in Afghanistan. We will always be fighting the Soviet Union. We will always be fighting in Afghanistan. No, we won't. The United States did not know what to do with the fact that it was the only global power. And for the past 20 years, history has been about the United States trying to figure out what this means. And of course, everybody is predicting that the United States is in decline. But of course, I remember in 1975, when everybody predicted the United States was in decline. We lost the Vietnam War, interest rates were 10%. So I begin with the fact that it happens that I'm American, but I think I would believe this even if I weren't. The single most important fact is that the next 30 years is the durability of American power. Let's begin with a simple fact. The United States constitutes almost 1/4 of the world's GDP. 1 out of every $4 made in this world is made in the United States. We talk about the BRIC countries. The United States GDP is almost $15 trillion. If you take all 4 BRIC countries together, their GDP is almost $11 trillion. Which means they would have to altogether grow by 36% for the 4 of them to equal the United States in economic magnitude. China would have to triple its economy to match the United States. There are people who say that China will triple its economy in the next 10 years. They must mean that because they say China will catch up to the United States in the next 10 years. I'm not sure how they do that. The United States may have deep economic problems, deep problems of competence and management, deep political divisions, but in the end it's huge. And it can afford stupid mistakes, which is fortunate for America because it makes stupid mistakes. The second thing is the United States controls all of the seas of the world. The United States Navy goes where it wants and cannot be challenged. Now, this sounds like an archaic point, because what does that matter? We talk about globalization. Globalization means increased international trade. Increased international trade will overwhelmingly take place in the oceans of the world. The ability to control those oceans is far from a trivial fact. It is a basic reality of the world. If the United States wishes to disrupt a nation's trade, it can. The United States doesn't choose to, on the whole. But the power remains there. When you compare the capabilities of the United States to the rest of the world, any other country, or even combination of countries, it is an unparalleled power. And it is possible
to mistake the stupidity of the United States for weakness.